A long time ago, our world looked a lot different. You can kind of look at Earth as almost a time capsule for every period of life that's existed. And that includes the very fascinating era of the dinosaurs. Hello everyone, my name is Hello Studios. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm an artist here on YouTube. I usually make toy crafting transformations. Today we are going to be creating Littlest Pet Shop style dinosaurs. But before we do get into that, I do want to thank our usual sponsor, Littlest Pet Shop. As usual, they've sent some new pets to unbox, and today's package is very special because this is the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive snake. Much like last year, being 3 dragons to celebrate the Year of the Dragon in Chinese zodiac, this year's zodiac sign is snakes. So we have 3 new snake designs. The majority of these snakes were sold exclusively at the event, which I want to preface, has passed. It was July 24th. It's actually just a few days ago. However, following this trend, it would be safe to expect a very high possibility of San Diego Comic-Con exclusive pets next year for the Year of the Horse. Just something to think about if you are planning on attending or are going to try to get tickets. What do you guys hope the horses will look like next year? Leave a little comment down below. In correspondence with the year, there are only 2,025 snakes per color sold at the event. And what's kind of special about the snakes that the ambassadors get, including the one that I'm holding, is that this one is unnumbered. So on the bottom of the box, doesn't actually have the placement in that lineup. It was kind of just made separately. I requested a red snake. It was definitely not a guarantee that I got one, but I am so happy that I did. This is such a beautiful design. As always, thank you so much Littlest Pet Shop for sponsoring this video, and I look forward to showing you guys more Gen 7 Wave 4 Littlest Pet Shop to unbox in the coming months. With that all being said, let's get back to the video. So since Littlest Pet Shop has never actually released any prehistoric designs before, the dinosaurs we're going to be painting today are created by my good friend Sunflower Pet Shop over on Instagram via her shop, Sunny's Pet Garden, where she sells all sorts of incredible Littlest Pet Shop inspired sculpts for customizers like myself to paint. Of course, I could just take a pre-existing LPS and we could kind of Frankenstein our own dinosaurs, but I was already going to be painting these for an Instagram collab with Sunny, so I thought it'd be cool to bring you along on the journey. These models are Brahmas the Brontosaurus and Pascal the Parasaurolophus. Even though this is hashtag not sponsored, I do want to thank Sunny for sending me these bases at all, because they were sent for free, along with some lovely little stickers and extras. One important thing Sunny did want me to note is that the resin used to create these bases is prone to wear if you mess too much with the ball and socket neck joint. So it's recommended not to remove the head from the body while customizing, which is easy enough. Please go support her. She's incredible. All links in the description, obviously. So before we can do anything with these dinosaurs, I need to cover them in a coat of Mod Podge. And side note, I'm sorry my nails look kind of crusty, moldy, green moldy moss growing on them. Last night I was working on this project, creating pine trees for a little scenic stop motion set, and it got all over my hands and kind of stuck to my nail polish. Anyway, got multiple stuff going on all the time. I'm using Mod Podge sealant here to kind of soften the edges of hard resin that these figurines are printed out with. The solidness of this resin does wonders in keeping these figurines very durable, but it just means that like the acrylic paint, when I put it on, will be able to scratch off very easily. So Mod Podge is a great prepping base coat, kind of like a primer coat almost. Just gives the paint something to stick to. I pulled out other scrap pieces of material that I have to kind of gauge something that would suit this project. Since I started making the conscious effort to do displays for my customs, I've been keeping my eye out at thrift stores for various materials that had some potential. I have these little realistic wood pieces that are so pretty I kind of feel bad, so I'll save them for another time. And these white wood pieces didn't really feel like they suited perfectly. And this longer piece, I do have a specific project I'm saving it for, so we're gonna put that aside. However, I have a very similar piece that's more circular, and I felt like this one would work perfectly. There's enough room for both of the figurines. It's got some space for other creative elements. Now that everything's prepped and picked out, I went ahead and did some research on the dinosaurs that we're doing today. So I got some references for the Parasaurolophus and for the Brontosaurus, and I also have various references of plants from both the Cretaceous and the Jurassic period. Because fun fact, these dinosaurs lived at different times, but they actually lived in the same hemisphere of the world, which is more of the Western North America region. Side note, but this guy's face was killing me. This step wasn't exactly necessary, but I have been making an effort to stop looking at my screen for so long while I'm like looking at references, because it can take hours to work on these projects, and it's kind of straining on your eyes. I like this more tangible way of going about it. Plus it just kind of looks cooler. I feel like a mad scientist with his obsession carefully lined out. To start the display, I cover it in this very oddly colored clay, because it's actually scrap clay I found at the bottom of my desk that had no use. It's alright though, because we'll be covering that up very soon with some paint. For now, I just lay down a very basic shape and structure, and then I start lining the entire thing with stones. I did go outside and kind of forage around and try to find various materials that were suitable. Of course, it always works to sculpt things on, but I think the natural elements add a sort of texture that's really hard to replicate. Of course, anything I found outside, I properly prepped and baked in the toaster oven for a little bit too to make sure everything was dried out. But I wanted to give it a little bit of contrast for the two dinosaurs sitting on it, so one of them is going to be raised up a little, kind of on like a bank, and then it divots below, and then I'll kind of fill up that space with a pool of water. So I just made sure to add a lot more pebbles and stones around the dipped area, with debris scattered all over the bottom of the water. And to keep everything in place and more sturdy, it was all sealed in a layer of Mod Podge. And then I'm starting with a tan base coat here to cover up all those crazy colors. And this was extremely satisfying. A little bit of a fun fact is where these dinosaurs resided in our natural world on our planet. I actually grew up in Western North America, specifically the Montana region. So my hometown was no stranger to dinosaur fossils. In fact, they're so common and readily found in the mountainous areas around there that there's a lot of museums and educational resources for them. Of course, all sorts of prehistoric discoveries are found all across the world. There are certain areas that they are more common though, maybe closer to the surface, but I definitely don't know the nuances of all of that. As I'm painting, I'm kind of just trying to keep everything a little bit barren and dry looking. A lot of depictions of prehistoric landscapes feel a lot more dried out. I think this has to do with perhaps where the sun was located during that time, or the ozone, or just something about all the inner workings of chemistry in the sky just affected how the creatures at that time lived and how the foliage and plants grew. So I read about a lot of various ancient plants while I was researching this project, and one of the ones that came up a lot are actually ferns. And ferns are something that are very common. They're actually everywhere where I live. Even if I look outside my window right now, there's kind of like a whole colony of them just right below. But these little guys have been around for a very long time. Maybe not in the exact form that we see them today, of course, but it was very common when these dinosaurs lived, so I knew I had to add them. I created them out of some scrap brown paper and airbrushed them for color. To bring some of the texture back into the environment, I went ahead and dry brushed a whiter color. And a lot of this is just me going back between dry brushing, coloring, kind of fiddling with everything, making sure it looks right. The natural colors of these rocks were very beautiful before, but I think dry brushing really brings out all the little divots and textures in them. I kind of kept shifting between dry brushing and wet paint, bringing on all sorts of coloring. I find this sort of painting so therapeutic. Set building in general is something that I just really love to do, is just kind of building up a little miniature world. If I could, I would love to work in like a stop motion production, creating the environments. I would do that in a heartbeat. I'll do it for free, I don't care. I'll be outside the studio doors just shaking the doors down like, let me in! Let me intern. Let me help build the next Coraline. I'll do it. But in terms of environment, I kept this one pretty simple. Very simple paint job, simple environment pieces, little miniature tufts of grass to bring everything together, and everything was continuously sealed in Mod Podge, paint, and then I went back over the bottom of the rim with solid black to give it a nice clean edge. And then for the little last step, I mixed up a mixture of resin and a little bit of airbrush paint. That was this sort of teal color. I have barely experimented with resin water before. It is a common technique to make realistic looking water. I think I added a little bit too much pigment for what I was going for, since it's a pretty shallow pool of water. The darkness of the color kind of makes it seem deeper than I intended, but It's not a terrible accident. I did find the solid color a little bit too fake looking though, so I went back in with some white tinted resin to create little wind ripples on the surface. And the entire thing was set by curing under a UV light. Since we do have the unique opportunity of painting 2 customs in one video today, we're going to be focusing on one at a time. So the first one we're going to do is the Parasaurolophus, which is the dinosaur that has the more duck-billed looking face structure. Fun fact, I did have to look up how to say Parasaurolophus a few times because that is a crazy word. I'm using this cardboard to protect my desk because we're going to be starting with some airbrush paint. So the Parasaurolophus is actually the dinosaur that lived in the Cretaceous period, and apparently it ate a mixture of leaves, pine needles, and twigs, so it was an herbivore. So just kind of maybe glorified cows? Now the thing about coloring prehistoric animals is that we actually don't really know what they look like. Historians can kind of take a good guess or predict based on melanosomes within their fossilized skin. So there are really small ways they can kind of detect pigment. Apparently this really only works properly if the specimen is very well preserved, and you can probably guess with how old these fossilized remains are. That's extremely rare. That's all to say, most depictions of dinosaurs are kind of just made up. So when gathering references for the Parasaurolophus, I made sure to include a range of how they were depicted on all sorts of scientific websites, National Geographic, museum. I decided to go with a warm, reddish clay color. In many of the interpretations of this dinosaur, people include stripes and spots. So I made sure to hone the airbrush tip on certain areas I wanted darker, especially highlighting the tail and the bill area. I do find airbrush a little bit hard to control for intricate details, so this just created a good foundation for coming back and adding in regular acrylic paint for the stripes. In almost every depiction of this dinosaur, I am seeing stripes somewhere on the design. I don't know if this is something that was discovered specifically for this dinosaur, or if it's just a popular interpretation, but I really think it's beautiful and I wanted to include it. So I mixed together this cream color and just started kind of intuitively drawing on stripes while keeping in mind the reference photo placements. I think the whole color palette of this cream color on top of these red tones looks so beautiful. It really gives the impression of like an animal living in a more desert environment. And I went ahead and colored in the eyes with a white base coat to start. I really wanted the eyes on these dinosaurs to pop in a different way than my usual customs, especially because there's just such a large surface area. So even though I kept the main coloring to be this light pink color, I wasn't shy going back in and adding all sorts of tones all throughout the dark areas, adding blue highlights, and just kind of intuitively feeling out how I wanted it to look. With everything painted, we can go ahead and gloss those beautiful eyes. And that's one Parasaurolophus brought back to life from history. With the first one done, we can go ahead and work on the Brontosaurus next. This is a more common dinosaur I'm sure you recognize. It lived in the Jurassic period and featured a very long neck that was used for eating foliage high into the sky. Glorified giraffe. So mostly stuff on top of trees. So we do have another herbivore dinosaur here. These are both peaceful vegan dinosaurs. Just happened to be born in, one of the most cutthroat times of our world. Like the Parasaurolophus, there are a lot of depictions of the Brontosaurus in terms of coloring, but there was a kind of general consensus of darker grays, browns, and blues. We already kind of did a brownish color for the other one, so I decided to go with more greenish blue tones this time. I wanted them to look distinctly different from each other, especially since they're going to be displayed together. So I was careful when selecting coloring, so nothing kind of overlapped too much. The Brontosaurus was honestly so large. Even honestly, all these dinosaurs are so big, it makes you wonder how they managed to eat enough little foliage to keep energized, I feel like when I eat like a kale salad or something, I'm still starving afterwards. How many leaves did this Brontosaurus have to consume a day? All the poor trees of this period were just stripped bald. Instead of going for stripes and spots this time, I went for more kind of squiggly blue lines, just because I wanted to add a pop of color, and I felt like this was really cute. It kind of suited this dinosaur. I think one of the most enjoyable things about painting dinosaurs and why I've wanted to do it for so long is just because you can make up the design so much. There's just so much creative freedom because there's just so many depictions of them. So you could follow closely referenced photos, or you can just kind of break apart the pattern and make something that feels similar. It's kind of fun to imagine how they truly existed on Earth. I was having a little bit of trouble brainstorming what color eyes I wanted for the Brontosaurus, because at first I was kind of feeling something more reddish, or maybe even green, but then I decided for a more yellow color. I felt like it just kind of brought out the design a little bit more. And then again, I wasn't shy with adding all sorts of other highlights and colorings within the eye to really make it feel vibrant and full of life. And with glossing the final eyes, both of these dinosaurs and their whole setup are done. So much for watching this art video. I really hope you loved the dinosaurs. I had so much fun learning about them and painting them all throughout the production of this video. If you enjoyed, please remember to leave a like, comment, and of course subscribe for more content. We'll be making all sorts of cool projects in the coming months, so I hope that you'll follow along. And if you have made it to the end of the video, comment below your favorite prehistoric animal, or one that's extremely obscure that you feel like more people should learn about. And you can add a little fun fact. We can all just learn a little bit more about our prehistoric world and all the creatures that live in it. I feel like I'm pretty interested in extinct animals, and then someone will just tell me some sort of crazy name that I've never heard of before. There's just so much in our history that's just really cool to learn about. I would love to bring more animals to life one day that have unfortunately passed on. I think art is a wonderful way to show your appreciation for something. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!